Good afternoon. My name is Justin Roy, elected member of council for Quebec First Nation, and I will be chairing this press conference on behalf of the elders and leadership of the Algonquin Nation. This press conference is a follow-up to the final oral hearing that just took place this morning regarding CNL's proposed NSDF site. Up here on the stage with me, I have respected Elder Rose Commanda from Kitigan-Zibi, Chief of Barrier Lake, Casey Ratt, Chief of Quebec First Nation, Lance Heyman, and Chief of Kitigan-Zibi, Dylan White Duck. And with that, I'd like to pass the microphone over to Elder Rose Commanda for a opening statement.
Kwikikinan, Nidijnikas Rose Commanda, Nidonjiba Kitigan-Zibi. I used to live in Chalk River. I could walk to the river. I was that close. The atomic energy plant was behind where I lived. My husband used to work for the atomic energy plant, and he had to be tested regularly for radiation poisoning. I don't think people realize the danger of the radiation, the disposal site that they're proposing. I know that Chalk River plant must have pictures of their first workers before they started testing them. It's a terrible death. They just wither away, their skin falls off. It's not a nice thing. So I want the atomic energy plant to please reconsider their idea of disposing near the river. Think about our brothers, the animals, their habitats, the fish in the water, the people that live along the river. Remember, we are all united on this planet. We all have to take care of each other. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Elder Rose Commanda, for your opening statement. With that, I could pass it over to Chief Lance Heyman.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to stay. I want to, first of all, acknowledge again the opening prayers that were done by our elders, the sacred fire that was done so that we started this process in a good way. I'd like to also acknowledge, the tremendous amount of support that we've received from our allies, from our fellow Algonquin communities. I know that while we are up here, there are also representatives, in the audience, from the communities of Temiskaming First Nation. I see the Chief of Pikogan here, Monique Kustabish. We have representatives from Wolf, from Lac Simon. Chief Lisa Robinson has been joining us virtually on the call. And of course, Kitigan-Zibi, the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, and other allies who are here in support. Today we are gathered here to address a matter of profound significance, one that demands immediate attention from the Government of Canada. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes réunis ici pour aborder une problématique d'une grande importance qui exige l'attention immédiate de la part du gouvernement du Canada. Our purpose today is to shed light on the pressing issue that weighs heavily on our hearts, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's pursuit of licensing for the permanent near surface disposal facility being proposed in Chalk River. The proposal is causing deep concern within our communities, as the proposed nuclear waste is in such close proximity to the Kitigan-Zibi Ottawa River. It is a risk that cannot be taken lightly. This river holds an immense spiritual and cultural importance for the Indigenous communities directly impacted by environmental issues, serving as the lifeblood of our ancestral lands. To this date, some communities do not have clean drinking water, and for us, it's inconceivable to poison the very waters for those who currently have a source of clean water. Our utmost concern is the lack of proper consideration for the fundamental Indigenous right of free, prior, and informed consent, a right safeguarded by both Canadian and international law. Disregard for Indigenous voices only exacerbates the gravity of the situation at hand. Notre plus grande préoccupation est l'absence d'une considération appropriée pour les droits fondamentaux d'Autochtones d'un consentement libre, préalable et éclair. Un droit protégé par les lois canadiennes et internationales, c'est non-respect des voix autochtones, ne fait qu'exagérer la gravité de la situation actuelle. This morning, the chiefs of Kitigan-Zibi and Nishnabeg, the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, and I appeared before the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, along with, our elders, technicians, and legal advisors, to voice our serious concerns regarding the impending licensing of a permanent near-surface disposal facility. In the face of this urgency, we implore the Government of Canada to stand with us and voice its opposition to this endeavor. The CNSC's pursuit of a permanent near-surface disposal facility in such close proximity to the Ottawa River contradicts international safety standards and jeopardizes Canada's commitments under various international treaties. By addressing the worries of the affected communities and stakeholders, the Government of Canada has an opportunity to showcase its dedication to a true and tangible reconciliation and its adherence to international obligations set forth in the United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous People. Our leadership in navigating this issue is pivotal to fostering a future of harmony, sustainability, and social justice. The First Nations, over 440 municipalities, numerous civil society organizations, and a large group of allies stand in their opposition and are urging the cancellation of the NSDF project at Chalk River. Instead, we call for a shift in focus towards a genuine cleanup of the site, one that doesn't leave behind a toxic legacy, and especially not at the expense of the health, safety, and respect of First Nations and their unceded traditional territories. In conclusion, I extend my gratitude for your consideration in this matter, and I'll now turn the mic over to Chief Dylan White Duck for a statement, and following that, Chief Rat, the elders if they choose to speak, and then we'll be prepared to answer questions. Thank you.
Kwekakana, good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for joining us here this afternoon. First and foremost, we had our hearing. We were only provided an hour to give our final statement, which to us is obviously disrespectful. We asked for an in-person hearing. The commission and the nuclear lab refused our in-person hearing. We had to have our hearing actually in COVID times. In person. We were forced to have it in person. And it's quite funny that there's no more COVID and they want to have it by Zoom. So traditionally speaking, we had to have our hearing virtual, which is not our ways as the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. The CNL, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and CNL, the Canadian Nuclear Labs, they're working hand in hand. They're working with each other to have this project move forward. As I mentioned in the hearing, it's biased opinion, it's conflict of interest. What they're doing is fraud, and they should be subject to a different type of third-party organization should hear them out. And it doesn't make sense. It goes against it's two groups making a decision, choosing where to put this waste disposal project. It's common sense. You can't have two groups working together to make this final decision. We are totally opposed to this project, the Algonquin Nation. I didn't like the fact that the co-chair who spoke right away acknowledged the two non-treaty organizations on that territory. They mentioned the Métis Nation of Ontario, which is another group that we're going to stand up to on another bill, C-45, that the government is introducing, which is a huge problem for Canadians and First Nations in particular. And just that in case, what do we have to do to assert our territory within ourselves there of our lands? Do we have to file a subject and other title claim on those areas and those lands that we never ceded or surrendered? Because this is the direction that we have to take, or do we take legal recourse now? Because what they're doing is totally fraudulent. We don't agree with it. And this group, as I mentioned, is just not, they're not reconciliation. When you watch their slide here today in the next hour, when they provide their presentation, they're going to have a slide on number 4 stating that all the Indigenous groups that they've worked with in reconciliation. That's not reconciliation. That's forcing it down our throats. That's unacceptable, and these people should be accountable for what they decide and what they do, because there's no accountability on these organizations. So I echo the words of Chief Heyman that we need the Canadian, the Liberals and the government of Canada to step in. This is not clean. We heard a minister speak a couple days ago in regards to fossil fuels and atomic and nuclear and all that stuff, and it's just moving forward. We don't accept this one bit. Something should be looked into. Something has to be done. As I mentioned in the hearing, we should have the United Nations, the Declaration, the Atomic Energy Board review this on behalf of Canada, because clearly Canada has no adequate reasoning to working in reconciliation with First Nations people in regards to nuclear waste disposal. Miigwech, and I do commend all the First Nations across this country who are helping and supporting us in this cause, because we need you more than ever. So miigwech, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm going to speak English now, and maybe a little bit Algonquin, but I just want to say, we want to bring the light to what the Canadian government is doing is, again, failing the First Nation people in this consultation process, which, again, I never believed in, because it's not a consultation that we need. They should be asking for our permission to build. And right now, we have the Algonquin people saying no to this nuclear waste disposal site. We only think about our future, and our future that is not born yet, and the animals, the rivers. We're not just thinking about the Algonquin people, but the people that live along the rivers. And again, Canadian government has been failing First Nation people since I can remember. I mean, I've been hearing this from our elders way back when. So again, let's the Algonquin people need to stand up, gain momentum to stop this nuclear waste disposal site. You guys.
Kwe Kakina, Claudette Commanda, in addition to Kos Kitagan Zibi Donjabon. My name is Claudette Commanda, and I'm from Kitagan Zibi. And I'm standing here with my relatives from Kitagan Zibi, as well as the other Algonquin communities. The nation is so important, and our voices are so important. What I'm presenting here to you today is from the point of view of a mother. I am a mother and I'm a grandmother, a caretaker of the family and a caretaker of the land. And in our Anishinaabe way of knowing and being and doing, in our laws that the Creator has given us, and the teachings of our ancestors, the women are life givers. And when we protect the children, we protect the land. And when we protect the land and the water, we protect the children. And if this nuclear waste facility is moved here onto our waters, what world will there be for our children? There will be no world for our children. We were taught that our responsibility is always about the children. Our leaders have spoken. They've spoken about our rights as who we are as Anishinaabe people, as Algonquin people, to our lands. It includes the children. Never forget the children, never. We need to speak our voices loud We need to show that respect to our animals, to all our relatives from the beginning of life of all of creation. In our teachings, we are told in our creation that the first life of Mother Earth was the water, and rose the land, the plant life, the trees, the insects, the animals, then human life. And nuclear waste, it's devastating. It's a sickness, absolutely, and we've heard that eloquently and articulately expressed here by the leaders. When I sat here listening to the stories or to the statements that were shared here by our people, and I could not help but think about back when I was 12 years old, when my grandfather, the late William Commanda, had brought in our people from all across North America, and all those prophet keepers, those spiritual people. And back in that day, we didn't have the word technology or nuclear in our vocabulary, but they spoke about this in a prophecy. And sitting here, and the prophecy is fulfilling, because they will come after their water. They came after our land, they came after our children, they came after our languages, they came after our spirit, they came after our culture. Now they want the water. And this nuclear waste facility will damage the water, and we all know that. And conscientious people are rising. Together we must rise. Together we are all in that medicine wheel. No matter our color and our creed or our title, but we are all related in that human family, and we must stand together. When we think about natural law, we think about natural law. And that is the first law that the Creator gave our people. The first law. And that first law speaks about the land, and it speaks about the water and the animals. And we have a responsibility to our brothers, the animals, to our sisters, the animals, to the water life, and to the land. We cannot stop the thunder. We cannot stop the rain from falling. We cannot stop the lightning from shining. We cannot stop the rivers from flowing. But together, as human beings, as brothers and sisters, we can certainly stop the nuclear waste facility from coming here on the Ottawa River. Miigwech.
Not too, I don't have too much to say after that, Claudette. I've been working on this and did the presentation last year at the panel in 2022. And the biggest concern was, yes, the lack of consultation, given the UNDRIP, but also the Supreme Court hearings. But my also background also has been like with the traditional, but also more of the project economic. And that was my concern too, as well as today we've had our economic system prior to contact with the trade on the river. We had Chief Teswat in the 1600s. And people would travel and they'd have to pay a toll. And we had a whole trade system going up and down here, even with the fish. So here we are now, and this whole system has been undermined with a new system. But what about the impact now? What happens when there's a spill or a mishap? And why this came about too is there is an article for the with the Whiteshell facility that CNL manages in by Winnipeg, and that they couldn't meet the fire code requirements for a nuclear facility. I said that's a little bit concerning. So, and then when we were talking with the CNL staff too as well, there's concern there too. I said, what about worker safety then? How are you, because this nuclear is unseen, just like COVID. And how do you know you're not impacted? And so again, too, as well, it's all so many issues that come into play, and even this whole procurement with the public-private partnership. So, but the biggest concern is the nation's capital now has grown in population tenfold. And here we are looking at expanding this Chalk River. So again, too, as well, and then as this consultation evolved too as well, we learned new things like nuclear-free zones. And I found out that New Zealand is a nuclear-free zone. And I found it interesting too as well. I was in Victoria last month in a hospital. And what happened is I noticed there was a lot of people from the Ukraine and Eastern Europe. And then finding out that Victoria, the city of Victoria, is a nuclear-free zone. I said, I wonder if that's also, if that influenced their decision to also come to Victoria over other cities. So it's all that questions, but also too as well, why do we need due diligence today? Because we're dealing with also now, we're on the tip of a major world war. And what's at the forefront is nuclear threats. But yet we're talking about expanding nuclear, even with these SMRs, the small modular nuclear reactors. We're dealing with inflation. How much would remediation cost because of inflation? We have an aging population. Will we have enough workers to carry out remediation? And also too as well, we have declining fertility. Low-level radiation even impacts male and female fertility. So what about our brightest and youngest researchers that Chalk River wants to recruit? Will they be supported? So again, and then we have rising debt, the pandemic, and climate change emergencies. We just had major forest fires. Is Chalk River also, if you have an uncontrolled forest fire, we have earthquakes here. And they assure us that it's totally safe. But again, too, as well, it's all these questions, and that's what consultation's all about. I think we need to have everyone in the circle also who brought up issues of consultation, and why we used a dream catcher in our method of assessment is that everything is interconnected. So I say miigwech, but I think too as well because of the change in population, and the Ottawa River not only also connects to Montreal, Canada's two major urban areas. Is it time to phase out Chalk River because of that? And so here we are, so I say miigwech, everybody.
Chimigwich to the three Ogimas for your opening statements, and Chimigwich to both elders for your kind words. We will now open up the floor for a question and answer period. I think it would depend on who you're directing the I think most could speak in French, understand? Lance, you okay? No.
So I can understand it, but I'll struggle to speak it to it.
Okay, all right, so I'll ask in English. What are you planning to do if the project's approved, or are you willing to take any legal actions?
Well, I think that's a definite possibility, given that we won't have much alternatives. if the decision is rendered. But we're hoping that, with the information we provided today, identifying the shortcomings of the existing process, that the Commission, in its infinite wisdom, will render the decision not to issue the license to create the NSDF. To say that we would look at our legal options, most certainly we would be doing that. And I think that was the purpose of having our legal advisors up here speak to, again, the shortcomings of the existing process and how, Canada intends to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which it speaks to and put so much weight and energy and time on. And as said, this will, address the issues that we as First Nations will have. The problem is it's an aspirational project at this point. There's an action plan, but it's not clear how Canada wants to implement UNDRIP. So, we're inviting the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada through its various ministries to sit down with the Algonquin Nation and figure out how we can implement UNDRIP, in relation to this project. But most certainly legal avenues have been discussed, but we won't know precisely what those are until a decision is rendered by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission.
Thank you. Any other questions from the media? Sure.